or lying on my bed, I see the interior, or it seems to be, of a great hotel, an unoccupied suite, ready for occupancy, but not occupied. It was just as vivid as any painting of a great artist. An artist could give us the impression of a three-dimensional picture. We know, reason tells us, it's on a flat surface. It's simply depicting three dimensions, but it is all on a flat surface. Well, while seated in the chair, or lying on my bed, my consciousness followed vision, and I entered that room. I actually occupied it. I came back to where I was seated on one occasion, to where I was lying on my bed on another, and then I went back, and again it took on a cubic reality. I came back knowing exactly what I am doing. I knowing this whole thing makes no sense whatsoever to the rational mind, but I could not deny what I am experiencing. Here I have the evidence. No one to share it with, but I have the evidence. I came back and I went back into the picture. And the moment I entered the picture, it took on cubic reality. And after doing it maybe a dozen or more times, I said to myself, I'm going to explore. This time I'm going to go right into it and remain there and explore, which I did. So I stepped into the picture, and as it closed around me, from my bed it seemed to be 30 by 20. But when I stepped into it, determined this time to keep going, regardless of consequences, it closed around me a third of what it seemed to be as I looked at it from the bed. So 30 by 20 became 10 by 7. I found it to be a dressing room. A dressing room of a huge, wonderful suite ready for occupancy. No one was in it. I'm the only occupant now. I came out by opening up a door. I didn't go through it. By some vapor, I actually opened the door. And to myself, I was solidly real. Just like the man that is talking to you now. My hand could open a door, and the door was solid and it was real, and I went through the door. I entered a corridor. It was a nice wide corridor, dimly lit. At the end of the corridor, intersecting it, was a brilliantly lit corridor. I walked down to the very end, and when I got to the end, here was this luminous, wonderful corridor. I saw two ladies coming down the corridor. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew how it began. It began by seeing what seemed to me just a vision, like a painting. I knew that I left my bed, my consciousness following vision, and I entered the painting, and the painting took on cubic reality. I knew it, so I called that a dream. Knowing it began as a dream, I said to myself, well, it has still to be a dream, but I am dreaming now awake. I am not dreaming, sleeping. I am fully awake, but it is a dream. And I said to the ladies as they came by, ladies, this is all a dream. They did exactly what any nice ladies would do, a stranger standing in a corridor and saying to them, this whole thing is a dream. They thought they were looking at a madman. So they got as far removed from me as they could and got right next to the wall. But the wall was as solidly real as that wall. They couldn't go through it any more than I could. And while looking at them, and they're frightened to death, they walked quickly by, and then I saw something hanging like a chandelier. It reminded me of an object that I'd seen about 6 months before in a friend's home. And he said to me, see, you can hardly tell that this thing is not suspended. If you look closely, there is an almost invisible thread that connects it to the ceiling. So I looked, and I did see that very little thin thread connecting this to the ceiling. Then I was convinced, well, it is a dream. This is a memory image of what I saw in my friend's home. So again I said to the ladies, look, this must be all gossamer. But as I held it, it was solidly real. It was just as solid as this. That surprised me. They kept on moving, and they moved rapidly towards the end. And here I am holding this thing in my hand. I took my hand off, and I said to myself, now you know it began as a dream, Neville. And there still has to be a dream. All ends run through to origins, and the origin of this experience of yours was a dream. So this must be a dream. But it is not a dream. I am just as awake as I am now talking to you, as I was talking to those ladies. When they got to the end, they looked back at this mad person in their eyes. I was mad. And they simply disappeared by stepping down a few steps into what undoubtedly was the great reception room, the foyer, our huge big hotel.